What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another Murdaugh discussion, right? It's the saga that never ends, the case that just keeps on going. And I think it's important to remember that some of these interviews we talk about with jurors, with lawyers, with people involved, give us good context to the case and help us learn about how these cases are handled, how the people most intimately involved thought through the process, what that process was like. I think can help us a lot in understanding future cases as well. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to understand this process, trying to get better at what we do and get better at analyzing it, figuring out what's going on and how the people involved are feeling. And that's exactly what we've got today. A lot of you have sent me this interview with Judge Newman, and we are going to watch it for the first time together here on the show. He is being interviewed by another judge, which I think is interesting. I don't know if this is in ends of court or at a convention or some kind of judicial roundtable, but it's an interesting setup here that he would be questioned by another judge. And I just am interested to hear his thoughts, whether or not he gives us anything to legally break down, or if it's just kind of his personal feelings about Alec Murdaugh and about this process. We've had a lot of respect for Judge Newman throughout the process. A lot of us really loved him throughout this trial. We didn't always disagree with what he did or what he said. And we also kind of felt like he believed the prosecution side as well, which is fine. I mean, that's fine. You listen to the evidence. Like I said, that doesn't make you biased. I think it can give you a lean as the trial goes. But we're going to listen to him today. He overcame a lot professionally and personally and dealt with a lot personally before this case and the tragedy in his family. I don't know if he's going to talk about that, but I think he just brings a lot to the table for a discussion, and he's a really interesting person. So it's going to be great to hear his thoughts on this trial. Let me know as we go what your thoughts are throughout the video in the comment section. If you have any questions, if you pick up anything that I don't, please let me know in the comments, and hit that like on the video before we get to the interview, and subscribe to our page if you haven't already, because just because a trial ends does not mean the coverage ends, does not mean what we can learn about the legal system ends, right? There is a lot more to come after it's done. So let's get to the video now.
The jury deliberated for just 3 hours. Did that surprise you before they reached their verdict?
Well, nothing surprises me when it comes to court and cases, really.
I love that answer, because he's right. In trials, and we see it in Paltrow, we see it in a bunch of the trials we've done and watched together on this channel, expect the unexpected. Just because you think it's going to go a certain way, or you think they should take a certain amount of time, doesn't mean they will. So I like that answer.
You just never know. These are people, they're strangers to me, strangers to each other, and they're sitting, it could be 12 of you on that jury, and how would I know what you're thinking? You're just listening and digesting it all. But my experience is when jurors have sat and listened to something for 6 weeks, over 800 exhibits presented, when they go back to deliberate, they don't want to look at those 800 exhibits. They don't want to spend their time combing through everything that they have laboriously sat there and listened to for that period of time. And it took them 3 hours. And
that's wild. I mean, 6 weeks, 800 exhibits. That to me, I would be surprised. I don't know if he is. Let's see if he says he's surprised.
Yeah, that's about normal as far as I'm concerned.
So he thinks that's about normal. Okay. And again, he's got a lot more experience doing this than I have. And he's been a judge, so he's sat through a lot more trials than I have and watched a lot more trials than I have. It was surprising to me and most people that heard about it, but not to him. Pretty normal, he said. Interesting.
Well, here, I have to ask, I watched the sentencing, and this was a person who practiced law in front of you. Did that make it any more difficult for you as the judge sentencing him after you knew him and he practiced in front of you?
Well, being from a small rural community and being from a relatively small state, I've had to handle cases where I knew the person who was accused or knew the victims, and judges have to make an individual determination as to whether they can be fair and impartial. But my test is not whether I know the person or knew of the person. It has to be whether my knowledge of them would affect my ability to be fair and impartial. And
I love it. That's perfect explanation. It's not whether or not you know a person or know of a person or know somebody who knows the person. It's whether or not your knowledge of that person prevents you from being fair and impartial. And it's not just like that for judges. It can be like that for jurors. Just because you know a defendant or just because you know a lawyer or know somebody involved, even know a witness, does not mean that you can't be a juror on this case. Now, if it makes you and puts you in a position where you can't be fair and impartial, then you can't be a juror on the case. But just because you as a potential juror or a judge thinks that they can still be fair and impartial, even with their knowledge of that person, doesn't mean it always ends like that. As we know, lawyers can argue to strike jurors, or they can just use a peremptory strike based on the knowledge. And that's an appropriate use of a peremptory strike. Additionally, lawyers can file motions to disqualify judges based on their knowledge of a party or a witness or a lawyer. In these cases, even if the judge personally makes that personal decision that they think they can be fair and impartial, and it can be an unoffensive motion to disqualify a judge, and sometimes those are granted. So it's kind of a combination of decisions, but the point is not whether or not you know the person, but whether or not that knowledge makes you unable to be fair and impartial. So I love that description that he just gave.
And we weren't personal friends, but since he was from a popular firm and popular lawyer, all judges, every judge in the state either knew him or knew of him. And when it came to sentencing, the fact that I knew him, of course, when you go through a trial, a murder trial or long trial, you always know the defendant by the time you get to the end. That's someone.
You do know about the defendant by the end, and you get to know people as you're there for 6 weeks, day after day after day. But I do think it's a little bit of a different context, getting to know somebody when all the evidence is pointing to the fact that they murdered somebody or they committed some crime, versus getting to know somebody practicing law in your courtroom, or getting to know somebody personally or at conventions or at conferences and things like that, or what they're sitting here right now. There's a lot of lawyers probably in the room, and they may come up and talk to him afterwards. Getting to know them in that situation and context is very different than watching all the evidence presented and watching them show up from prison every day. So while you do get to know a criminal defendant throughout a long criminal trial, it's a little bit different than getting to know somebody in real life or even professionally speaking.
Who's been there with you for a long period of time. So whether you knew them beforehand or not, by the time you get to that point, you sort of know that person. But it did not affect me as far as.
I like what he said there. You sort of know that person. And he said it didn't affect him.
Rendering the sentence that I did.
Well, let's talk about that sentence. I mean, that was there's usually 30 days before you have a sentencing hearing, and we were a pre-sentence investigation. Tell us what happened at that sentencing, and how did that all come about? Because the verdict was this day, and the next day was the sentencing. So tell us how that happened.
Yeah, the verdict was Thursday night around 7 p.m., and we were all pretty exhausted by that time. So I'm anticipating that the lawyers would want some time to prepare for sentencing. And I was prepared to wait for whatever period of time it would have taken for a pre-sentence investigation and report to be provided to me. So when I asked the lawyers, how long would it take? When will you all be ready? And they said 9:30 tomorrow morning. So we have no mandatory requirement of getting a pre-sentence investigation. Of course, I didn't think I really needed one, but I was.
Yeah, guess what? Nor did anyone else think you needed one or thinks that there needed to be one. Lawyers in the courtroom, parties in the courtroom. I don't think Murdaugh thought. I don't think Murdaugh's lawyers thought that. I don't think the AG's office thought that. And I don't think anybody on YouTube basically thought they needed a pre-sentence report in this case. Everybody knew what the sentence was going to be. And when you have cases where a lot of the public are calling for the death penalty and asking why you didn't seek the death penalty in a case like this that may warrant it based on the crimes charged and convicted of, it's almost always going to be a life sentence. And the judge knew that, and everybody knew that. And just for clarification, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Anybody sitting in that judge's chair for this trial should have given a life sentence based on the crimes charged and convicted of. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there was no reason to waste time. There was no reason to wait 30 days. There was no reason for a pre-sentence report. There was nothing that was going to be argued to mitigate this to a level that it would not be a life sentence. So the judge admits he didn't need one either, which I thought that's some good candor with the audience.
Giving them that opportunity to present whatever mitigation evidence they wanted. And they said they'd be ready the next morning. Of course, they all were working out of town from their home location and had been away from home for 6 weeks. And I think they all were ready to kind of get the case over with. So they said they'd be ready 9:30 the next morning, and 9:30 the next morning, I'm then prepared to hear what the lawyers have to tell me. And whatever person they have to say something, including family members, friends, whatever. And they told me nothing. They had nothing to say, nothing to present. So I'm left at a situation, okay.
And we heard from them that there was no reason. They didn't feel like it was necessary to put the family members through that.
Hey, well, what do you have to say? Asking the defendant.
But did you have notes or anything prepared for this at this time?
No.
Nothing.
No.
All right. So the prosecution presents nothing. The defense offers nothing. So what do you do?
Well, I'll take it all the way back to law school. I could go through a semester and end up with a page and a half of notes. I've never been a great note taker. I've just been engaged in everything at the moment and trying to perform without having to do something scripted, like your questions are scripted, right?
Two things right there show me he's really smart. He doesn't need to take a lot of notes to do well in law school. And number one, he's quick-witted. I think people that are quick-witted usually are incredibly smart. And I think he's really been funny and made some quick-hitting jokes throughout the process of us watching Judge Newman. I would take books of notes in law school, literally books of notes in law school. I think it's really impressive he could do this in 1 page or 1.5 pages. That's wild.
I only have 30 minutes here. Come on.
Well, I have my notes. I try not to be scripted. So no, I'm just focused in the moment and trying to absorb everything that's involved in this case and this process and trying to make the proper determination at a given point in time. So here we are, and he's standing before me to be sentenced for having been convicted of a double murder. And basically he told me he had nothing to say either, other than it wasn't me.
Boy, your comments were just so appropriate at that time. And I just think that the community, the world watched that and just thought, wow, this judge has it together. And I was just amazed at, I know everyone has heard what you said, but I mean, just in the one comments is in referring to the shooting death, within your own soul, you have to deal with that. And I know that you have to see Paul and Maggie during that nighttime when you're attempting to go to sleep, and I'm sure they'll come and visit you. And then,
so that was interesting. I thought Alec kind of agreed that he's going to be thinking about them at night, and he was thinking about it in a positive way. Newman obviously was thinking about it that they're going to haunt your dreams because of what you did to them. So it's interesting he brought this up. Let's see what Newman has to say. This is just kind of a personal feelings more than any legalities.
he responds all day and every night. And then you say, and they will continue to do so, and reflect on that last time they looked in your eyes. And I was just like, wow. And then you just went right to the center. It's just amazing. And just the way you handled it was just, unbelievable. And good.
Yeah. Well, a person who kills another person, I'm told that the person who is killed will come back, and they'll never be able to get over the moment in time that they took that person's life. Now, whether that's a spiritual belief or just my view of the world, is also the subject of a barbershop conversation one day when a customer was arguing to the barber, saying that if you kill a man, he will haunt you. He'll come back, and you'll never be able to get that person out of your mind. So we don't have any convicted murderers here, do we?
I don't think so.
Hopefully not.
So we don't have the actual experience of knowing whether that's true or not, but I posed that question to him, and in my mind, no doubt he loved his family. I don't believe that he hated his wife, and certainly I did not believe that he did not love his son, but he committed an unforgivable, unimaginable crime, and there's no way that he'll be able to sleep peacefully.
Yeah.
Given those facts.
There's certainly going to be a movie and a mini series about this. And I was joking with the judge and his wife. Who do you think will play you? And I was
interesting. Does this sound like our chat or YouTube? They're always talking about making it into the movie. Who's going to play who? Who's going to play who? So before we hear their suggestions, who do you think should play Judge Newman? Put it in the comment section now while we're paused. I really think there's only one person that makes any sense at all, and that's Morgan Freeman. I think, I don't know if there's a better part for Morgan Freeman to play, but that would be my guess. Guys, everybody put your answer in the comment section or in the live chat. Let's hear what they say.
Thinking like Morgan Freeman, right? And he looked at me and said, "No, he's too old." And
he said Morgan Freeman. He said, "No, he's too old." Gosh, I love this guy. Now, this would be a guy, like you talk about who you want to hang out with in the legal community. He'd be at the top of the list of anybody we've watched throughout any trial. Ben Chu would be up there as well, but he would be, I think, at the top of my list at this point.
And then his wife said more maybe Denzel Washington, and he was more into that. Who do you think would play you in a movie?
I love it.
Oh, boy.
Good wife, too.
Judge Nugent said I should play myself.
There you go. Right. There you go.
He should play himself. His wife says Denzel. I like that. I like if your wife says you should be played by somebody that's like Denzel, that's a compliment. That's a good wife right there.
I don't know. This story is continuing to be written. I would never would have thought that I would be involved in a case that would have garnered so much notoriety that it would be something that would be talked about nationwide. I've received letters from all over the world about this case. It's really been truly amazing. So I don't know what the future holds as far as movies or anything else. I do know that we have mandatory retirement in South Carolina at the age of 72.
Ooh.
And I turned 72 in November, so I'll be looking for something else to do.
Interesting. So that's the end of the interview, and he's going to retire in November, mandatory retirement age, which is really interesting. I don't think he's going to have trouble finding speaking engagements, or even if he wants to go work at a law firm. I think it's going to be pretty easy for him to find a job now that he's basically a famous judge. And I don't think he would have a problem even without this case, as he was citing his own case law in the past and decisions he's made. So that was a cool interview. A lot of it was more personal than the legal side, which is still fun and lets us get to know Clifton Newman. And that was fun. Like I said, I think he's at the top of the list of anybody we've seen in any trial, judge or lawyer or party that I'd want to hang out with. So that was cool. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Hit the like button on the way out. Until the next one, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok at Tragos Law is our handle. And don't forget to listen to the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. If you have a pase you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.